Actually, you know what, Kevin, actually, we're gonna give folks a couple of quick minutes, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely. You guys, I think Jim Harbin thinks that it's in Teams.
Right, I'll connect with him to make sure he can join.
Yeah, I just sent him a message just on Zoom, but maybe he didn't see it yet.
Thanks, Carmen. Not sure why there's a Teams. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Back of the Yards Roundtable. For those of you who are joining for the first time, thank you for coming. My name is Sonia, and I'm a planner with the Department of Planning and Development in the Southwest region. So tonight's meeting will have live simultaneous translation by Luis. I'm going to have Luis say a few words to you all and introduce himself. Luis.
Muchas gracias, Sonia. Mi nombre es Luis Fernando Garrido. Yo voy a ser su intérprete en esta noche. Si usted necesita acceder a la traducción o la interpretación en español, por favor seleccione el botón que está abajo en la barra de Zoom que dice interpretación. Y allí estarán escuchando mi voz simultáneamente a la voz de los panelistas. I'm ready to interpret.
Thank you, Luis.
Okay.
All righty. So we have a pretty full agenda tonight. We'll be kicking off the meeting with a conversation with the Chicago Public Library on the new Back of the Yards Library. That will be followed by an update from CDOT and their consultants from TESCA and perhaps some other groups as well. And then we'll hear from Carolyn of LISC. She'll be reflecting on the roundtable with you all. And lastly, we'll provide an update on the Invest Southwest RFP project, United Yards. And I think we'll actually hear from a member of the development team. You have a few ground rules for the meeting. Just out of respect for others, please stay muted while others are speaking. Please raise your hand to speak. Feel free to use the chat and Q&A whenever you'd like to make a comment or ask a question. And lastly, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our website within the next couple weeks. Maggie, without further ado, would you like to get started?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. I'm Maggie Clemons, Deputy Commissioner of Library Operations at Chicago Public Library. I'm really happy to be here tonight with other members from our library team. We have Carl Geider, Assistant Commissioner for Facility Planning and Building Operations. You'll hear from him shortly. And Patrick Malloy, our Director of Government and Public Affairs. And you may hear from him as we go through some of the question and answer sessions. We want to thank DPD for inviting us to the roundtable tonight and our elected officials, especially Representative Ma, who's really helped make this opportunity of a new Back of the Yards branch library possible. And I think I saw Alderwoman Taylor on the list there. So thank you, Alderwoman Taylor, as well, and Alderman Lopez, if he's here too. So again, I'm happy to be here tonight. It's good to see some familiar names and faces. For those of you who don't know, I was the branch manager of Back of the Yards Branch Library from the very opening day in 2013, actually before that, when we were unpacking all of the books to put them on the shelves, until 2017. My time at this branch and in this community has really been a highlight of my career. I was looking through photos last night for today's presentation. You'll see a few coming up. And my heart really swelled, remembering the kids and the families that I met, the laughs and the hugs we shared, the story times, the crafts, the books, the library cards, the field trips that the teens took, and the things that I learned from everyone who walked through those library doors. And I continue to learn. My heart still swells as the library and the current staff, they continue to do the work with the community, connecting you all to library services and resources. And I really want to thank the Back of the Yards team for the work they do every day. So I'm familiar with that work and the challenges of that work, the challenges of the current library location. And I'm really familiar with the opportunities that we have for a new location, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. So as this slide says, we are going to provide an overview of the CPL process for construction of a new library. And then we'll hear from you to get a sense of what you're looking for in a new library. And then we'll just share next steps. I just want to note to everyone that it's important. We won't be able to do it all. And we won't be able to likely hear from everyone tonight, but there'll be an opportunity following tonight's conversation to continue listening and hearing from everyone. But we do want to hear what's important to you as we identify a new location and what your priorities are, not just for the branch library interior, the exterior, and the entire property as well. So with that, we will go ahead and I'll turn it over to Carl, and he can talk about the timeline we're looking at.
Thanks, Maggie. I am Carl Geider, Chicago Public Library. I am the Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Facility Planning and Building Operations. And we facilitate in making sure that all 81 branches in our city work. I would like to go over the tentative timeline of how this is all going to work out. I say work out because it is going to work out, right? So I always speak positive terms. We are, of course, here in late 2021, and the community engagement is beginning. That will last throughout the duration of the project. So that's my favorite bar in this whole graph, because it's important for everybody to know that we'll be engaged with everyone throughout this whole process. Currently, we're in the site scanning process, which began and will continue through the early parts of 2022. After that site scan, of course, we will need to actually settle on a particular site in which this library will go. There's always definitely a few months of acquisition that need to occur. There's always a back and forth. It's dollars, land, what part is what, and how it all works out. It all takes a few months. And I always say when you buy a property, there's just a bunch of people involved. So it can be a pretty drawn out process. We'll also, during that time, concurrently be working on the funding release. Of course, the funds are there, but there actually is, of course, a lot of process into getting that released. And once we're at that point where we have a particular piece of property and we have the funding in place, we'll have to hire the architectural services team, and they will begin a process in which they will also be on board for the remainder of the project. They'll do the design. We'll go through plan review. By then, we'll be in about 2023, getting the permits from the city, getting everything approved, and then construction's probably set to begin in about mid-2023. You have a ground-up facility. It's going to be multiple thousands of square feet, including the landscaping around it. That's generally going to take 12 to 15 months. And by late 2024, we are hoping to be inside the new facility with a grand opening around that time. So from the time that we're speaking now, hopefully we're all enjoying the new library in 3 years. That's a fair timeline. Please understand that is tentative. It could definitely shift to being longer than that. I don't see it being much shorter, but it could definitely be longer than that. But this is a good timeline that is realistic based on the parameters of the project.
And I just want to say that during this entire time, thank you, Carl, there will still be library services in the current location. So we'll still be, have a library in the community until we get closer to the grand opening and then the interior prep. And then there would just be a short period of time where we would be closed or try to provide services elsewhere until we have the grand opening celebration and move over to the new building. Thank you.
So, which zone do we prefer for this new library to be in? So, what this map shows is the area in which we definitely want to have this particular branch go. It speaks to this neighborhood and the main cogs of it. And, definitely we want the branch to be within this area. North, south, east, or west, that's part of the site scan process that we're in now, trying to identify what's available and where this can feasibly go. There's always there's a game you have to play when you're looking for a site that demands a building this large. And one of the reasons that we're here tonight is to try to get feedback from everyone that will lead us to decide, do we need a 20,000 square foot piece of land? Do we really need a 30,000 square foot piece of land? Now, what's available is definitely going to dictate that. And I want to make it clear that, the ideas that we come up with tonight, we're going to have to play a juggling act of what can actually be done based on the piece of property that we are able to get. This is a very developed area, so there's not a ton of properties available. We're going to try to work within, what we can and still provide as much to the community as possible. So we're going to be definitely reaching out to the individuals on this call, to see what your preferences are. And this is a great map to look at to kind of get your mind going on where you really want this to be, with 47th and Ashland being the main center, but there being a whole lot of opportunities along those sides.
Sonia, how does the Zoom poll work?
So we will actually be having everybody take a quick moment to select their preference, north, south, east, or west. Let me see if I can get this going here. And I've just launched the poll, so everyone should be able to start voting.
And just while that poll was going, I just wanted to add a little bit of a extra to that of course, this is the ISW corridor that you're seeing, and having been in a recent event and seeing the impact that some of the community members that were selected, seeing their reaction and seeing people in literal tears at the joy of being able to do projects within these corridors really hit home for me. And it's just exciting to see everything that's happening in these corridors, and to be able to be a part of it as a member of Chicago Public Library. It's just really exciting. So I don't know how many people I'm talking to, so I'm being relatively subdued, but I'm really jumping up and down because we're just really excited about this opportunity.
We have 46 participants tonight, Carl,
Okay.
and it looks like 23 folks have voted. I'm going to give you all a few more seconds to get some last minute votes in, and then we'll move on.
Can I mark all four? No, I can't.
Okay, going once, going twice. And we have closed it out here with, looks like the eastern section had the most votes, followed by the northern, and then the western, and lastly, the southern section.
Interesting. Thank you to everyone who cast their vote.
Yes, thank you for participating, everybody. Moving right along.
I'm gonna talk about what's gonna really be important in regards to this location. Now, everybody's gonna have their ideas, but just to kind of go over the broad strokes. So 47th Street, Ashland, or Damon, obviously those are the main avenues of the ISW corridors. Walkability, obviously, you know, we have public transportation, we have, you know, the good old fashioned car, but, you know, we really want this to be in a walkable neighborhood where the library becomes a part of, you know, part of your day. You know, obviously there's a lot of commercial and residential sectors within that interior neighborhood. You know, we want to be a part of that walk and within that fabric of that community. There's always, as with any public facility, but especially with our libraries where individuals are coming to our branches and staying for 3 or 4 hours, parking is always an issue. We never can have enough of it. And of course, due to being in a very urban environment, if I ask you how many parking spaces you need, I think we'll all come up with a number bigger than what we can get, but we really have to try to hone in on a number of what the community feels is necessary. And then based on the piece of property that we are able to obtain, the proximity to public transportation is important. So, you know, do we go for a bigger piece of property that may be able to have more parking that probably won't be as near the main hub? Or do we gear more towards public transportation, and which will become more necessary for maybe a smaller site? This doesn't mean that this is the only one A or B option, but it's just the more realistic options that will probably come in play based on what piece of property that we have. And then safety, how that comes into play with not only where the branch is located, but you know, how it's also constructed and what you all are looking at as far as making sure that you come to this building and you feel safe. We're going to make it safe, of course, as best as we can, but what are the things that are important to you all as far as safety measures are concerned with a very public building where, unlike a lot of public buildings, we don't turn down a lot of people at all. We really don't turn down anybody. So, you know, that's the thing to think about when it comes to safety. So we're going to be looking for your thoughts on those items.
Yeah, and these are just a few prompts. Thank you, Carl. These are just a few prompts, questions to get people thinking, talking. I do apologize. I haven't been part of a presentation quite like this with, you know, people putting things in chat, question and answer, and talking. So Sonia, I'm going to look
Yes,
to you
I'm
for
actually,
help.
yep, right before you actually started talking, I was about to say, we
Okay.
have a question from Jasmine Pisano. Why not both public transportation and parking availability, she asks.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I think that definitely will, yeah, I probably should have made it seem like A or B, but I mean, definitely we're gonna try to do our best to have parking available. You know, generally our average, I'm literally going with an average branch, so it doesn't mean that this has to be that. I'm just trying to give you something to base your thoughts off of. Generally at the average, you know, roundup branch that we've done in the last 20 or 30 years, we have about 10 to 15 parking spaces. And that branch may or may not be, you know, right by public transportation. So do I see that there could be an opportunity to have some level of a few parking spaces and by public transportation? Absolutely. But the fabric of the neighborhood definitely more than likely means that the closer we get to that public transportation being available, we're probably going to have less parking because we're just going to have a smaller piece of property. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, we don't have a set piece of property, so I'm speaking just on you know, a wealth of previous experience for projects like this.
Yeah,
I'm
and
going to step in again and say that we might not be able to answer everything right now. We really want to hear from you about what is important regarding accessibility.
yeah, so I think to add to that, I think the idea isn't like, is it parking or public transportation? It's not, these aren't all either ors. It's really, the idea is to try to get an understanding of which factors are the most important to the community. Is Is it a specific location? Is it something that, a location that's walkable? Is it a location that, you know, is the actual specific location less important? Is parking, you know, a site that's bigger and allows for more parking? So it's really kind of, and I think, you know, before that follow-up comes of like, why can't we have more, all of these? I think it's really trying to, as we look to try to identify available locations, like what are the things that we need to be, what are the most important things, the priorities we need to be considering as we explore that further.
Any questions or any comments on any of that before we move on? I'm gonna pass it back to Maggie Clemons.
What kinds of programs would you like to see in the new library? We have some photos here illustrating some of the programs we currently offer or have offered in the past or could offer in the future. So, you know, music programming for youth, making, such as sewing, arts programming for families or for individuals, and just a early learning and play spaces for our kids and for our families. So anything anyone particularly likes and attends right now, or anything I'm seeing chat what's happened to feedback on the former slide. I wasn't sure that we heard much feedback, but we can certainly take feedback from the former slide as well.
And Maggie,
And
there's
if I can just jump in real quick, sorry to interrupt, but I do want to encourage attendees, you know, if you do want to provide some feedback, you know, feel free to either type into the chat, type into the Q&A,
Yes.
or raise your hand and you'll be able to speak. So
yes, please feel free to speak, everyone, if you have comments or questions. I do see one question in the Q&A from Jesse. Are there any sites currently being considered?
We are currently doing a site scan, and we've done it. It's been more of a high level, really just trying to identify what's available. And by what's available, that's essentially been, you know, land that's city owned, or it's available now. But we've done that at a high level. We have not honed in on any one site at this time. So we are very open to any possibilities that may be available.
thank you. And I'll read off some of the comments in the chat. So this is in reference to the current question that's up. What types of programs would you like to see in a new library? Jasmine Pisano says community conference rooms, job training, early learning, storytelling programs, youth media, representative literature. Janet Tapia says programming for teens and a state-of-the-art media center. Juana Medina says Microsoft applications for adults, adult emotional support groups. Angie mentions cultural programs. Juana also mentions American Sign Language. And so those are some of the things that are coming up. You know, I don't know if we want to go back and kind of readdress the previous question if folks have input.
Yeah, it looks like they do, Nolan. We have another comment from Anna. She's mentioning the 47th Mcdowell, Ashland area intersection and the former Social Security site. I think we had that comment earlier as well.
Yeah, so we're starting to get some
Yep.
recommendations for locations. Janet added one as well. I'm going back. Laura mentions multipurpose room, auditorium for book presentations, trainings and workshops, community gatherings. So we'll make sure, you know, anything that's being put in the chat, we'll also make sure that we, you know, record this and get it over to public libraries.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to speak too much about each individual space, but I'll say, and Maggie and Patrick, please let me know if you feel different. I didn't hear anything that I don't feel that we would not provide in a standard branch of this size and type. So that's great because it shows that I think that what the community wants, we're well into thinking about and planning for. within a particular branch. A branch would certainly have a decent sized community room, and it would also have smaller study rooms for smaller groups to meet. So that definitely would be hit. And that's just an example, but most of what I heard there absolutely would be included in a branch of this type.
I'd like to address the comment from Jasmine about the new standalone library. Is it going to be constructed versus placed somewhere? You know, the hope is that it's constructed. We would prefer to own the location instead of being inside of a leased space and move away from, that's what our current structure is right now. So that's what the hope is, but we will also see what opportunities are brought to us.
Yeah, and also in response to the question, the suggestions about locations, I think they're more than welcome. We're happy to take a look at those. I think that we are aware of some of the property that is available right now, and we're willing to explore any of those options further. But as we explore, I think that's where it's really helpful for us to know what's the most important. What are the most important things to consider? So is it proximity to 47th and Damon? Is it proximity to 47th and Ashland? Is it maybe okay to be a few blocks away as long if that means that more parking can exist? Again, those are the things that will help us. We're not able to really comment on specific locations right now because we haven't gotten to that point where we're in communication with anyone about the sale of the property. So, everything that these are all great ideas and things that we have been discussing internally.
And going back to the question about programming, Consuelo also added a few recommendations or suggestions, space for children with special needs, workshop space for the community, an audio visual room. So a lot of good ideas coming through in the chat right now. Recreational programs for the elderly community.
We have one comment from Araceli regarding location. She says Ashland is much more accessible than Damon. The 9 and 47 buses both run there, whereas Damon doesn't have as much access to public transportation. Does anyone want to make any other comments on programming, or would anyone like to share their comments aloud? Please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas whenever you have a comment or question. We have another comment from Laura regarding programming, smaller rooms for study groups, recording, attending online education, presenting and recording online presentations.
Great. And certainly feel free to continue to put ideas in the chat, and we'll make sure that they all get recorded.
Yeah, just because that's in our built-in program. We generally call for having 2 small study rooms that fit about 4 people, and then that can actually be expanded to fit 8. So it has that flexibility, and so that would hit that right on the head as far as that goes for smaller meeting rooms.
And Anna has raised her hand. Let me see if I can find, there we go.
Anna should be able to talk now.
There we go. Anna, would you like to make your comment? Are you there, Anna?
Yes, sorry.
It's okay, no worries.
After 2 years, you would think we would get the Zoom.
Oh, it happens to all of us, so no worries.
So I think I'm really excited about actually having a conversation about a standalone location. Have you considered sort of marrying all like the different projects that are happening in back of the yards? I keep bringing up the old Social Security site just because next to that there's a huge vacant lot. And it's, I know that they're looking at doing possibly closing off the street, the Mcdowell, and making a little plaza right there on 47 and Ashland. But also I think one of the things that it's lacking in the community currently is this large meeting space for large events, whether it's candidate forums, whether it's, these kinds of meetings. Hopefully someday we will be able to have these in person. So the current library is tiny. When they do have activities, it's a little too tight, especially during COVID. And I think that, the representation of the community, the library really does a good job, but, like public art and all of that would be nice to see.
Thank you, Vanna.
Yeah, absolutely. The standard building program calls for this would be, of course, non-COVID numbers, but calls for a room that would definitely be able to hold 50 people during a standard occupancy situation.
And I saw Sister Angie's comment, and Carl is talking about like just our standard program. So this is standard, and again, there's room to grow, there's room to pull back. So we do have we're a large system, and we do have some things that are consistent across all of our buildings. So there are some things that we always include, but then there are some things that can be unique as well. So we're here to listen.
We have a comment from Janet. She's saying there are many vacant lots and lots of space on 51st and Ashland. These are major streets and are part of back of the yards. Can this area be considered?
Thank you, Janet.
Let's see. And then a comment from Jasmine too that's important. She's saying it's important to consider community input once the areas are identified to consider safety regarding gang territories and gang violence to make it neutral for the youth and others to access.
And Consuelo sort of echoes that in her comment as well about the importance of having a library that's in a safe space.
And I think that's that kind of gets at what we're looking to gather from the community here tonight is, I think some of the ideas about like what are the most important things. It's like if safety and something and such, if those are important as we're selecting sites, if there's any additional feedback about like specific neutral and safe areas that you think, I think that's something we'd be glad to hear, and it would be helpful in kind of looking at the different options and coming up with the location.
And we have another question from Jasmine. She's asking, who is the point person for the community to communicate with outside of this meeting?
We were just talking about that before the meeting started tonight. We don't have like a standard email or anything, but we can share out when we decide how that will be communicated. It will likely be me or my office, but we can share that out with everyone when DPD shares out notes and everything from this meeting. And I've seen a few comments here, and I'm sorry, Sonia, to jump ahead of what you're saying. What is engagement going to look like? We don't have another date set, but we plan to continue having conversations, and what will be, they're all important, but when we get into design development too, once the location has been secured and the architect has been secured, we'll continue to have conversations throughout this whole process.
Okay, let's see. And there's one question, and then I think we need to move along to the next slide, but there's one question regarding site selection. Will you be communicating with us throughout the site selection process?
We hope to. That's the plan.
And I'll just jump into and say, if there are any questions that don't get answered, because the chat is moving pretty quickly here, we'll make sure that, we'll put out an FAQ after this that tries to answer any of the questions that aren't resolved tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nolan. Okay, next slide.
So some of our, programming and amenities go hand in hand. So we have some photos here of our early learning play space at our Albany Park branch. It's a place for 0 to 5 to learn about early literacy skills, but also social emotional skills and learn how to interact with the world, with each other, with other little ones, with their families, to hang out, to read books, and to play a little bit. We also have recording studios across the system. And there is a U-Media space, which is a digital space for teens at the current location. But there's the possibility to have a recording studio in this location if that's something the community is interested in, and not just for teens. We'd like, adults like to record podcasts. They have their own creative pursuits. So that's an example there. And then Divi Bike Station. We've talked about public transportation. We've talked about parking. Just a Divi Bike Station is another opportunity. But there are you've got some other city departments on the call. What are other amenities that you would like to see, not just inside the space, but maybe surrounding the space? I saw a few comments about, a reading garden or an actual garden. So again, would like to hear from you all what sort of amenities you're looking for. And this will be not a poll, but a chat or raise your hand.
Yes, please feel free to raise your hand if you all would like to speak. And let's see here.
I've seen a couple of comments on how any feedback will be collected besides just right now. So I don't think I'm the right person to address that, but we should probably just let people know how they're going to be able to provide their comments outside of this meeting.
And we do have one hand raised. America Campos. Let's see here. America. Not sure why. There she is. Okay. Sorry about
America, you should be able to talk.
Yep. America.
Hello?
Air America.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, because I unmuted myself twice. I was like, what's happening? Okay. So I'm glad that we fixed that. Thank you. So I do think that as we're talking about just ideas, right? Brainstorming very early. The outside space, I think, is really important to consider, especially because depending on the ultimate location, you do want visibility, but you want somewhere where families feel comfortable, right? And I think that for the short months that we have the ability to be outdoors, especially now with the pandemic, there's a real appreciation of how valuable that is. And so if we can really be unique in the way that we consider the designs moving forward for public spaces like libraries, I think that is a great opportunity that we should consider. Like, now, how can we transform Chicago public libraries to meet the continuous needs? Like, how long is this pandemic going to be, and what other needs will arise from this, right? Some people mention like mental health issues, right? That we never would consider the library as a place to deal with that, right? But with the limited green space and things that we have in a city like Chicago, I think that we need to be more intentional with considering that now. So I would really appreciate for that. And I know that others have raised this, this topic as well in the conversations about how they are going to be hopefully creating that little plaza right there, what someone mentioned earlier. Something like that, just great, getting input from the community, like something culturally relevant, something that people feel like it's part of their identity, or you want pride in these public spaces, and it can be something unique to the identity of Back of the Arts. And again, this does require us sharing in a space like this, but I will tell you, like, I don't feel comfortable not seeing my own face in the screen. Like, I was expecting somewhere where we could all have like a little community meeting and see each other's faces, and I appreciate that sometimes. So just keep it in mind for the next meeting that we do have. There are like 50 of us, I heard, approximately in this meeting, so it could be challenging, but maybe have multiple meetings as well where groups like can speak up more comfortably. If it's a Spanish only, I think that would also allow us that space, like for those of us that are bilingual or those of us that are only Spanish speaking. Please do consider that moving forward, because the majority of our community members speak only Spanish, and they're the moms and the dads who have been working really hard for this library. That's all I have to share.
Thank you. And it's good to see your name and hear your voice, Monica.
I know, Maggie. Oh, thank you to have you here for this, because I think you're the best. So thank you so much.
And I'll just jump in here too in the chat. People, we've had two people, both Ana and Corina, mention outdoor space and green space, the importance of incorporating that into a site. Consuelo mentions the need to have a building that is multiple levels, to have enough space for children, young people and adults.
Did we lose you, Nolan? Or were you still reviewing?
No, you didn't lose me. I ran out of comments.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I mean, someone asked
Sorry.
if heating and cooling is amenity. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a serious question or not.
I think Consuelo continued with her comment at the end. She said they deserve a large space for the library, a building that is modern and pretty.
And pretty.
On top of the other comment she said about more than one story.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions on this topic? Amenities? If not, we'll move ahead.
So really want to thank everyone for participating, and we've heard and read that there is an appetite for more, and we will compile and review the input from this meeting. There will be a community survey of preferences, and we do understand that there are more stakeholders. We do understand that there are more community members, and we want to reach not just the library users, but the people who will be future library users, because for whatever reason, they're not using the library right now. And those who are, just living and engaging in the community. We'll provide a report of those results at a future roundtable, and then we'll continue coming into these community listening sessions throughout the process. And I don't have that date or timeline right now, but you can anticipate hearing from us or seeing our faces again within the new year.
If I can just jump in, yeah, I would just, to kind of echo what Maggie said, as always, this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. And we will make sure to keep folks informed of those, those upcoming opportunities to engage, to have your voices heard. When that survey gets released, we'll make sure that that gets distributed widely. Yeah, Ana, I just want to circle back, because Ana did ask a question right at the end about engaging local schools to get input from children and youth. Maggie, I'll hand it back to you, but I'm sure I know what the answer is.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, that the library is currently situated in a school, and the youth are our future. And, we would see and continue to see there's so many elementary schools in the community, kids running to the library after school, and their voice is important. So we will figure out a way to engage them as well. I appreciate that.
Great.
Just to circle back on an earlier question, is there a point person that folks from the community, residents can reach out to if they have comments or questions? Is there someone at CPL that can sort of be a main point person? Of course, you all can always send your questions to me and I can pass them along to the CPL team.
Sonia, if we could do that for now. We were just having that conversation, the library team, right before the meeting started. I don't have like a general email box that will probably with a, new back of the yards library.
Right.
Public library email. So
Sure.
we need to figure out a process for that.
Okay.
Emails will I'll likely be the contact, or my office will. But if you could be point for now, the community understanding that we'll hear from you, and then we'll have a process or a point of contact in the future that we'll share out.
Sounds good. I'm putting the email in the chat right now, everyone, as we speak.
So just a few themes, the general themes that I wanted to address from some of the comments and questions. One thing about the programs and the question about are these things already decided, or what are the current programs or what are, I think the important things are that nothing's been decided at this point, not even like we, I mean, I think there was one even comment about about it being 2 years since this money was given to us. And I want to make clear that we actually we don't have the money yet. So in that bill where the money, once again, thank you very much to Representative Ma for fighting for that. But that was a larger bill of the state capital, for the state capital spending. And when that was passed, it was deemed that projects would be released as money was available. We have not had this released yet. And it's not to say that it won't be, but it's just that some of these processes do take time. And so we're working with the state to get that money. We're also going to need to be working with private owners to negotiate sales. So while we do want to move as quickly as we can, there are some steps along the way that could take time. And so any timeline we would give, and I think something just popped up, the funding does not expire. So just like anything we give is an estimate. So another thing is on the programming. So I think people asking the types of programs, we have everything. We have things for folks of all ages, anywhere from, obviously we have books and reading material. We have early learning. We have some play-based learning spots in certain locations. We have teen media labs. We have all these different things that, I think the important thing is that there will be there will be flexible space in this library that will allow for us to adjust and offer all sorts of different programs. And the branch team will be working with the community and trying to identify ways to be responsive to the actual needs in the community. But as we design the library, at times, if there is a certain population or a certain focus area, those things can be considered as we bring in the design team to start thinking about the layout of the space and what are the types of things that are especially desired. I mean, it's not like you're deciding all the programs that are going to happen. That will evolve over time. But as we're thinking about layout and everything, it is always important to understand what the needs and the desires of the community are. That may mean just for size of certain spaces. That might mean the proximity, where the way everything is laid out. So there will be more discussion of that as we go on. Right now, it's really just about gathering the input, and we will continue the conversation with the community.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Maggie and Carl. We do have one question. I'm wondering if, I think it's worth mentioning. Angie's asking is there anyone from Rep Ma's office on the call who can explain the situation with the state budget?
She herself was on the call. I don't know if she's still on though.
So I spoke with her right before the meeting, and she was here, but she wasn't able to stay. She was only able to stay for about 40 minutes. So, but I think $15 million was allocated to, and in the most recent city budget process, the library, we put something into our budget to allow us to accept that money. And so I think with any of these capital projects, it is just, the money is, these projects are funded over time, and it's just a natural thing. It isn't that we are at any risk. We're not at risk of losing the funding. It's just, it's a process. And I think, I don't think there's any reason to be alarmed, and we'll continue the discussions with the state. And I've been talking with Representative Ma as well directly, and we'll continue those conversations if we need to really push harder. If we get to a point where we're ready to go and we need to get those released, I'm confident that we have the right people to make that happen.
And I just noticed Ruben Bautista from her office is on the call. Ruben, did you want to add anything to that?
I just want to start off by saying thanks for having this meeting. My name is Ruben Bautista. I'm the Chief of Staff for State Representative Teresa Ma, and unfortunately she had to jump off the meeting, but want to reiterate the comment that Patrick made that Representative Ma fought for the $15 million for the funding of and construction of a new library in the back of the yards. And if there's any additional questions that the community members may have about how we could help support the community efforts, I'll leave my email in the chat, and feel free to always get in contact with our office as well.
Thank you, Ruben. Okay.
Thank you everyone for attending, and I really want to again thank the team at Back of the Yards currently for all the work that they're doing and how they're engaging and providing wonderful services and programming right now. And we're looking forward to what we can all build together in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Maggie and CPL team.
And I'll just mention again, any questions that didn't get answered in the chat, we'll make sure that we get those, all compiled and sent over to CPL, and we'll get an FAQ sent out to folks.
Absolutely. Okay, moving along to corridor improvement updates. And I think there's actually an activity as well with CDOT and Tesca Associates. Jody, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, thank you. Let me do that. Okay, is everybody able to see that okay?
Yes, Jody, thank you. So I'll start. Hi, Jody, how are you? My name is Vanessa Irizarry. I'm a coordinating planner with the Chicago Department of Transportation. And we're here to give you an update and have a discussion on the 47th and Ashland corridor improvements. Next slide. So we just wanted to sort of give a brief introduction on who the team is, give you a little bit of a project overview and existing conditions, talk about the community outreach and key takeaways that we've learned so far, talk about some preliminary design themes, get your feedback on those design themes, and talk about next steps and answer any questions that you might have. Next slide. So the project team is led by CDOT. Luke Kabanak, our project director, is also on the call. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Luca, feel free.
Sure, thanks, Vanessa. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Luke Kabanak, project director of Chicago Department of Transportation's Livable Streets team. Thank you.
And we also have another project manager that works with us on this project through CDOT. Stan, if you'd like to introduce yourself. You're muted if you're trying to introduce yourself, Stan. He might be having some technical difficulties. That's okay. So the rest of our team is made of our consultants, Christopher Burke, Tesca Associates, and we have Jody here from Tesca. If you'd like to introduce yourself, even though you spoke already a little bit.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Jody Mariano. I'm a principal landscape architect with Tesca, and we're so glad to be here.
We're also working with Sam Schwartz, TransSmart, and we have a local artist working with the team on the project. Next slide. So most of you have seen this already, but it's just a quick overview. The corridor improvement project lies on 47th Street between Loomis and Hoyne. and Ashland between 43rd and 49th Street. The scope of work it includes a lot of improvements that we're currently analyzing. So we're talking about roadway geometry, intersection improvements, resurfacing, drainage, sidewalk, curb and gutter improvements, pedestrian safety improvements. We're talking about ADA ramps, crosswalks, street lighting, traffic signal upgrades, pavement markings, signage, potential paver parkways, side street improvements to the alleys as needed. We're talking about site furniture and potential seating areas, light pole identifiers, gateway identifiers, landscape improvements, and of course, the potential plaza at the 47th Ashland and Mcdowell intersection that we've been hearing so much about. Next slide. So we are here, fall 2021, although it does not feel like fall, it is still fall 2021. We started the project in spring 2021 and started the analysis of existing conditions. In the summer of 2021, we had our first public meeting. We had our first online survey where we received feedback from the community about their concerns and what they would like to see in the area. We had stakeholder interviews. We participated in our second roundtable, and we started developing preliminary concepts. Right now, we just had roundtable number 3 not long ago, where we provided sort of an update on the online survey. We were about to open that survey. This is Invest Southwest Roundtable meeting number 4. Public meeting number 2, we are estimating will happen in December. And we are starting to work through those preferred concepts. Winter, spring 2022, we'll have another public meeting, we'll have another roundtable, and we'll have an additional online survey. Next slide.
Hold on, honey.
So we won't get too much into existing conditions right now. But basically, we've been looking at both Ashland and 47th Street and what those existing conditions are. Based on the existing conditions and the feedback that we've received so far, we're starting to develop corridor concepts based on the analysis that we've conducted to date, and we'll be presenting that at the next public meeting. Next slide. So a little bit more detail on the community outreach that we've done to date. We had a public meeting on August 25th via Zoom call. We had the online survey or community poll that was open for about a month. And we have approximately 100 participants on that online survey. We had business and residents focus group meetings. We'll be doing a little bit more of those in the near future. Again, as I mentioned, we'll be having a second online survey and a second public meeting. So we just wanted to show you a little bit of what we've learned to date from the community. We asked at the public meeting, what did you want to see prioritized along the corridors? And we heard that people wanted to be able to walk more and that they wanted more landscaping. When we asked what the main concerns were, we heard that traffic congestion and pedestrian safety were a concern. Next slide. So what does the community want to see prioritized? Number 1 was the most important. So we saw walking, driving, riding in a vehicle, shopping, and dining. So these are things that we're all looking at to make sure that we keep into consideration as we move forward in concept development. Next slide. Key takeaways. In terms of roadway features, we heard that transportation concerns included speeding cars, double parked vehicles, and congestion. And the street design should balance traffic flow with more pedestrian-friendly corridors. There's a concern about lighting. So more lighting is desired along the corridor. So we're looking at that. And we heard that people want to see more trees, greenery, and beautification along 47th and Ashland. In terms of placemaking, we heard that the 47th Ashland and Mcdowell intersection is challenging. And there's a lot of support to close the slip lanes at Mcdowell to reclaim portions of that street to develop a community gathering space. We understand the 47th Street Damon Avenue green space is used for community events, and there's an interest to further support that. And we also heard that sidewalks and open spaces want to be used for public seating, gathering, greening, and community expression, especially along side streets adjacent to businesses. Next slide. In regards to culture and identity, we understand that the back of the yards neighborhoods is a mix of different cultures, Mexican, Latin American, African American cultures. These all contribute to the vibrancy of the district. And the streetscape design should reinforce that character. We hear that throughout all of the respondents, and we heard that at the public meeting as well. Community members have expressed that we're missing our history. So Back of the Yards has a rich history, and they also want that depicted into the corridor improvement design. And the Back of the Yards neighborhood has been recognized as a place where immigrant communities can achieve the American dream and can make it. The streetscape should put Back of the Yards in a positive light and change perceptions so outsiders feel safe and insiders feel connected. So that's something that we've been hearing throughout, and we have started to do some work in developing some urban design themes that will actually express what community members are saying, and ultimately that would be incorporated into the corridor improvement design. Next slide, Jody. And now I will leave you with Jody, who's gonna go through all of the themes and what we've developed to date and get your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you all for having us this evening. We really enjoy all of the public outreach that's been done to date. A lot of the things that Vanessa spoke to, you'll see were in quotes. Those were actual words from the folks that we spoke with. And so it's inspiring to us and inspiring in the way that we start to come up with some streetscape themes for the corridor. This slide here, this came out of the first public meeting. At this time, we were sharing some very early ideas about how streetscape can convey a theme or a narrative about a place. And at that time, we asked folks to respond to these three very preliminary themes as to what they thought would be most appropriate for a family of themes for the community. And so you can see here the ones that were selected was this one here that was more about tradition and history. And at the time, we didn't really know much. That was when we were first just getting started. And so after having the conversations that we've had so far, we're starting to understand better what all that means. And so based on that input, as well as the inputs from our poll and the interviews and the focus groups, we've started to develop some thematic ideas or narratives about the community. The streetscape is really an opportunity to tell a story about Back of the Yards, and we want to make sure that we're telling that story as best we can. So this map here, this comes from a publication from 1911 that was looking at all the different ethnic groups that were drawn to the community for work. Per Vanessa's earlier comment about we can make it. This is a place where people settled for work. And it was a community that was sort of a community within a community, or sort of a city within a city, but a very upscale community surrounded by the stockyards, by the railroad tracks, and by a whole host of different neighborhood groups. 47th and Ashland really was sort of the epicenter of commercial activity and a very diverse community. So we started to think that the design themes can start to juxtapose those historic themes with some of the current things that we're seeing happening in the community, such as the vibrant murals, vibrant shopping districts, and such. So I'm going to take you through three themes, and we're also going to ask you to keep your smartphones or another device handy, because after we go through these themes, then I'm going to turn on a Mentimeter activity, an online polling activity, where we're going to ask you all to help us select the themes that you think are most appropriate for the neighborhood. And you don't have to remember everything because you'll see imagery in that online poll. So the 3 themes are here. The first theme is what we call the Back of the Yards Historic Commercial District meets modern neighborhood vibrancy. This theme really leans into the classical architecture, the things that we saw at the early part of the 1900s. You're seeing images here on the slide on the left from Walter's Tavern, which was one of the first taverns that served all ethnicities. Also, you see this image on the right, which is from the People's Theater, very classical style architecture. And so these are things that can start to evoke a feeling of place, as if you were standing underneath the canopy of the theater in the warm glow of bulb lights with very rich paving textures at your feet, very classical stylings. These are things that can be emulated in the streetscape. Also, we see imagery of buildings and builders in the murals that you see down here on the bottom right. So these are all things that can start to hint at the types of streetscape features that could come out of this theme. We're also looking at gateways and identity features. And in this theme, we've started to think about that comment, that we're missing our history. And how can we tell that history? And so one way that we can tell the history is by starting to evoke some of the structures that we may have seen in the past, like the Mcdowell Settlement House or the piers and the canopy elements that you would have seen at People's Theater. These could be canopy structures that might fit into that plaza at Mcdowell Avenue, for instance. Also, opportunities to memorialize some historically and culturally significant moments in the past through things like interpretive plaques and signage and things like that. As Vanessa mentioned, we're working with a local artist, Robert Valadez. Robert has put together some art for us to integrate into the streetscape here. This would be art that could be incorporated into street light metal banners, or they could be incorporated in full or in part into other components of the streetscape. This one here, this kind of ties into this first theme. These identity panels and features can memorialize the corridor as the historic and the cultural center of the community. So you see here, this is what was the view, what we think was the view near 47th and Ashland, near Goldblatt's, with the streetcar coming down the road. People dressed in their finest when it was sort of in its heyday. Moving to the second theme. So taking a departure from all of that classical architecture. Theme number 2, this is about the back of the yards, transportation and industrial corridors as the lifeblood of the city. So this leans into things like the robust, very strong limestone gate at the back at the Union Stockyards, very strong, robust steel structures, rivets, and trusses that you'd find associated with the railroad, the linear nature of the streetcar rail, imagery of transportation that we see in the murals throughout town. And this really kind of starts to tell that story about how the stockyards and the transportation that came out of that really connected Chicago to the rest of the country, became the way to transport goods throughout. So some things that the gateways and identity features can play into could be vertical piers. They could be in small clusters. If we have a large space like a plaza, they could be in singular elements where we have a very narrow section on a sidewalk, but these could be something that references the stockyards and the railroad infrastructure. Some examples on the right here show lettering that's engraved into limestone, shows plays on color. This other image here in the middle shows elements that tie into some of the rivets and the strong steel trusses that you'd see along the railroads. And then in working with our local artist, Robert, he's created here some identity panels and features that talk about the grassroots nature of muralism, but also look at strong elements of architecture like the Stockyards Gate. And you'll see that there are always going to be people in Robert's drawings here. He is very focused on showcasing not only the subject matter, but also the people of the community and trying to reference them as best we can. He's incorporated the Back of the Yards logo, and we're so grateful that Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council shared with us the logo materials that were provided some years ago. And you can see here that this image is shown split on two sides of a light pole identifier. So that could be an application here. I will say here that, you know, this is an example, this yellow imagery is showing a Mexican cultural example. This could be any type of symbol. It doesn't necessarily just have to be this one, but this was an early study that we looked at. But the intent is to show diverse cultures across the community. Okay, moving on to theme 3. And thank you for sticking with us here. So theme 3 is about Art Deco and agriculture, meatpacking to urban farming, and it's a mouthful. But what we are looking at is the history of food in the community. And we know all of the history with Upton Sinclair's The Jungle and of course the stockyards, but also thinking about modern times and things that are having to do with plant-based food and places like The Plant and urban farming, and how food and native plantings are sort of, you know, telling another story in the community. Art Deco style architecture is also prevalent in the community. It's a style that was coming out very shortly after the classical period. And as we see in other places in Chicago, is an opportunity to use floral motifs or plant motifs in Art Deco style buildings. So for our gateways and identity features, we could celebrate those native plantings and plant-based food elements through geometric Art Deco patterns, such as you see here. These are totems or columns. They could have etchings or engravings in them. They could be singular or they can be in clusters, depending on the space that we're looking at. But generally, with these gateways and identity features, we of course have very little room when we're working in the public right-of-way, and so usually, you know, thin footprint, but a fairly tall feature is something that we can work with. Robert here has produced this panel here, which is an identity panel and a feature that tells the community story about native landscapes, food and farming by and for local families. And so here you can see an image of rooftop gardening with the neighborhoods in the background. And then lastly, you know, each of those past 3 themes look at very different narratives, and we are going to try and hone in on one here. But regardless of which theme gets used, we do believe that there's an opportunity to kind of have an overarching theme of color and culture to tell a story of the neighborhood's vibrant streetscapes. And so taking a cue from the colorful murals that we see throughout the community and starting to look at color themes and patterns, this is the type of thing that regardless of which theme we select, we would like to integrate color to kind of help celebrate that vibrancy. So I know that I've just kind of whizzed through a bunch of things. At this point, what we are going to do is ask you to help us think through what you like, what you don't like about those themes. And as I mentioned, we're going to show you some imagery from those again so that you don't have to remember it all. I'm going to switch my screen and I'm going to ask everybody to take out their smartphones and go to menti.com. It's MENTI.com, and you can get to it from any browser. Let me get to a different window here. Okay. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen again? It's a different screen. It says visioning activity on it.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you, Sonia. All right. So if you use your smartphone, go to any browser, Chrome or other, and click on this website, www.menti.com. It's going to prompt you for a code, and you will input this code, 2084-5065. And so we'll give folks a moment or two to get in. And I'll just kind of give you a couple of quick rules about the Mentimeter. It's fairly simple to use. We've got just a few slides to get through. After you answer questions on your phone, please be sure to click submit and keep your eye on your screen. We'll be displaying everybody's results in real time on the screen. Also, if you get kicked out for some reason, you can always go back to the website menti.com and input the code. This will always show up at the top of every one of these slides. So just keep your eye on your screen. If you get turned around, you can always get back into it. So far, I see 3 people have gotten in. So we'll give folks a couple minutes just to kind of make sure everybody can get in. And thank you for the hearts. If anybody is having difficulty getting in, let us know. We can help you. It's usually pretty simple. Sonia, are there any questions in the chat of folks having a hard time?
My apologies.
I just want to, it looks like it maybe.
I think they were more related to.
There's a separate conversation happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like everyone's able to. Oh, can you say the code again, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the code is 2084. 5065. And it's always at the top of the screen. So if you're using a smartphone and keeping your other screen open, you can always take a look up here at the top of the screen. Sonia, I have one more question. How many people are logged in? I'm just going to kind of keep an eye.
We have 40 right now.
And we only have 10 that are in here right now.
We have 28 attendees.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Sorry. No.
28. Well, maybe an 11. I see sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. I understand you guys have a full agenda, so maybe in the interest of time, I'm just gonna go ahead and advance. And if you see that I've advanced my slide and your phone doesn't advance, just go ahead to click advance. It should automatically get there. So this is the first slide, which is really just a test. It's called a virtual sign-in sheet. And so we're just asking you all to enter your name and then click submit. Wonderful, it's working. And I recognize some of these names. And so we're so glad that you guys are here. Okay, all right, this is wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, so let's go to the first slide. Okay, so the first slide is, this is the theme number 1, just as a reminder, that this theme is about the historic district meeting neighborhood vibrancy. This theme memorializes the back of the yard's culturally significant events and historic architecture through classical details and interpretive features. So the first question is, what features do you like or dislike about this theme? And you can just enter your comments and click submit. I like the architecture of the theater. None, it's not how I see back of the yards. That is a very fair statement. Thank you. I like the old historic look of it, the Art Deco. Oh, good. We'll get to the Art Deco style. That's the third one. Does not represent current populations. I like the curvilinear canopy. I think I'm starting to see a theme that while it's nice architecture and maybe was what was here a long time ago, it's not really representative of what is here today. And you know, there's other ways to have this historic connection. It could be things as simple as signage and plaques. It doesn't have to be this. Me gusta. That's nice too. Thank you. This is really helpful. All right, we're going to go to the next one. So this is number 2. This is the theme about transportation and industry as the lifeblood of the city. So this theme references the stockyards and railroad infrastructure using industrial forms and materials. And so just like the first one, tell us what features do you like or do you dislike about this theme? Too harsh and cold, though. Connectedness is a great theme. Love the mix of material and more representative. I like that comment about the stockyard gate. And you know, it's such a great element to incorporate because limestone is available and you could do such great things with it. That's a great comment. This represents our culture and hardworking people. I like the murals, the people painting the mural and the stockyards at the top. Do not like the stones. I like the signs with the muralists. That will include other cultures. Yeah, this is great. And you know, that admittedly, that image of that stone pillar is a pretty raw looking element. But I appreciate these comments because there are certainly other ways to treat stone.
Jody, there's a comment that someone doesn't understand the theme. I'm not sure if you want to go through that again.
Oh, sure. Well, so this theme is about, this theme is about looking at, you know, transportation and railroad infrastructure. So this is about sort of, you know, more robust themes. It's not something as detailed as classical architecture, for instance, but it's something that is more about stronger materials, thicker materials, maybe expressing the way that they're connected to one another. And the muralism is another component of this theme that our artist was exploring to kind of tell that story of grassroots art coming up through the community. Okay. This is really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, we understand that there are probably some images associated with abandoned railroads that are not so attractive, and we would for sure want to make it look nicer, not like it's an abandoned piece of infrastructure, but that's a great comment. Okay, theme 3, Art Deco and agriculture. So this is about meatpacking to urban farming. This theme celebrates the native plantings and the plant-based food through geometric art and deco-inspired patterns. And so just like the last two, this is the third one and the final one. Tell us what features do you like or dislike about this theme? This theme would be great if we actually incorporated native plants. You know, I will say that we're using a lot of native plants that are also salt and urban tolerant in streetscapes. And so there are other plants out there that can be used. This is my favorite. I feel it incorporates all the features people want to see. The Art Deco references. The Art Deco references are really more in the identifiers. Part of an image of this is here on the bottom. Builds on the great work by the Star Farm and the plant, popular theme. This is more representative of our current neighborhood. bring it back to the prairie and marshland it used to be. That's cool. This is very helpful. Includes some chickens. Sure, why not? Urban farming is futuristic and not our current reality, but I like this theme the most. Yes, we agree. Most immigrants did come from farming communities, and food production is really important. Okay, this is very helpful as well. Thank you. I think this is going to be our last slide, and I feel like I probably know what the results are going to be, but we're going to ask you all to rank these 3 themes in order of your preference. So you can click on which one you like. Even after you click them, you can probably still drag them around, and don't forget to click submit once you've done making your selections. Well, it looks like the Art Deco and agriculture is at the top. Historic district and the transportation one are close, but not as strong as the first one. It looks like we have 21 that have voted here, so I think that this is probably the max. Thank you. This is really very helpful. I really appreciate all of the comments, the likes and the dislikes. I think it helps us as we move forward. We're going to be taking this input and refining these themes further, but your comments help us a great deal to do that. So thank you very much. I am going to go, I think that is the last one. Oh no, one more. Any additional comments about the design themes? Anything that you'd like us to think about? Anything that you haven't already said? Now is our opportunity to hear more. Can we incorporate elements?
I'm just going to jump in. I know we're sort of up against
Yeah.
time here, but I
Sure.
appreciate everyone staying on. And if folks can, you know, stay with us just another 5 or 10 minutes, I think we can probably get through this and the last couple updates. So thank you all.
Thank you, Nolan.
Thanks,
And
Nolan.
sorry, we're going a little bit long. This is the last one.
This
so
is
I
good
can-
stuff. No, this is good stuff.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. And I think to this question, can we incorporate elements of all 3? I think that is why we wanted to know what you liked and what you disliked. So I think there probably is room to incorporate the things that you did like. So we'll need to take that back and look at that. Keep it culturally respectful. And we hear you, the desire to incorporate all aspects of the community. We agree.
I think that's a great comment, actually.
Absolutely. Okay, in the interest of time, and I'm going to go back to my other screen here. And I know Vanessa was going to speak to the last slide. As I'm pulling it up, there is a website on this last slide that has more opportunities for input. So this isn't our only chance. We're still listening. So take it away, Vanessa.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you everyone for your input. That was very informative. That was great. As we mentioned and Jody mentioned, we're going to be refining the themes and the corridor design concepts based on your feedback. And then we'll be holding a second public meeting, and we will certainly be providing information on that meeting date in advance so people can put it on their schedule. And we now open it up for any other questions that you might have. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vanessa, Jody, Lubka, and team. If anyone has questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. You can send them over to me and I can pass them along to our team at CDOT. Be happy to do that. So I'm gonna share my screen again. Just a moment, please.
And again, I just want to thank everyone who's sticking with us for what is the longest neighborhood roundtable we've had, an hour and a half and counting. Here, I'll go ahead and share mine. Does that work? Can everyone see my screen?
Thanks, Nolan.
Yeah, no problem. We'll get through. Ah, there we go.
Okay, so I think we have Jim Harbin from the Department of Planning and Development on the line for this portion. Jim?
Or Caroline, I know Caroline's with
Or
us too.
Caroline. I'm not sure if Caroline is still with
I'm
us.
still here.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
Caroline.
am. Thank you. I will be super quick. I know it's been a long meeting. Good evening, everyone. I'm Caroline Rendon. I work at LISC Chicago, and I've been working with Jim and others at DPD on sort of thinking about how we can reflect on how the roundtable has gone. It's been just shy of 2 years worth of roundtables in this neighborhood and the other Invest Southwest neighborhoods. And so following this meeting, we'll be sending out a survey on sort of asking you to just share a little bit about what your roundtable experience has been like, and soliciting some ideas for improving, for making sure that these really are a productive and genuine forum for community input. And we will take those survey results and then lead them into another future facilitated session here at the Roundtable live with folks, and really understand how we can all commit to seeing some improvements, knowing that we can always do better. We're so just wanting to take as much advantage as we can of the opportunity we have every month to meet, and to make it as productive as possible. So as I said, it's a great time to reflect. Thanks, Jim. So Nolan and Sonia will follow up this meeting with those surveys, which are available in both English and Spanish, both in the chat and as well via email in the follow-up email. If there is anyone who needs or wants paper copies of those surveys to distribute to anyone who may have trouble with a virtual survey format, I will put my email address in the chat, and you can reach out to me and I will be happy to provide you with a paper survey. That's all I've got. Want to leave it at that out of respect for time, but Sonia, Nolan, and Jim also have access to my information if anyone else wants to reach out about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Okay, moving right along to a quick RFP update. So as some of you know, we have, as a part of Invest Southwest, an RFP project that's been selected to redevelop the site at 1515 West 47th, and then additional sites along the corridor. The Team United Yards is on the call tonight, but just very briefly, we wanted to share that the internal review process is underway. And we have a unique project in back of the yards because actually there are two teams that responded to the RFP are now collaborating and working together to bring both programs to fruition. That's Back of the Yards Works and United Yards. Scott, would you like to say a couple words?
Certainly, thank you. I guess just to summarize, our team is really engaged in a lot of the detailed due diligence that's important when you're starting to get to know the sites and trying to understand what needs to be done to build the great project. I think so that's underway. What I'm really excited about though is the collaboration between United Yards and Back of the Yards Works. We have kind of an agreement worked out as to how we'll work together, and we're continuing to kind of fine tune that. But that process is going very well, and very excited about how that'll make a great project even better. One thing though that came out of a discussion that Jesse and I had with Alderwoman Taylor. I don't want to put words in the Alderwoman's mouth, but I think she was generally happy that things were progressing between Jesse's team and ours. But she did express a concern that the community was confused possibly about what this project has become. And I know we had a really great Meet the Developer meeting, and Jesse's team participated there as well. But I guess I wanted to throw the question out to everybody on this roundtable. If you share that there is some confusion, and if you do, I wanted to offer to perhaps have another Meet the Developer meeting where we could, bring Jesse's team out and our team out and kind of reintroduce the project and provide an update on how this project is kind of evolving with the collaboration between the two teams. So with that, I would love to hear some feedback from the group, and if you think it makes sense, we'd love to schedule that second Meet the Developer meeting for sometime after the first of the year.
We do have a couple comments, Scott. We have one from Angie saying, yes, we need another meeting. It should be located east of Ashland and south of 47th and accessible to this quadrant of the community. And then RSLA says, yes, I'm confused. So sounds like we might have some interested residents interested in having a meeting.
Great.
And Jesse Iniga has recommended Tom's Place. Angie says there's a lot of clarity that should be provided.
So it sounds like that's a yes, Scott.
Yep,
Great.
that's a yes.
Well, happy to do it. So we will collaborate, or we'll get together and plan that, and then we'll communicate the time and provide a convenient location.
Thank you, Scott. Well, everybody, thank you for hanging tight with us for quite a while tonight. We appreciate your participation, all your comments, questions. I encourage you to, Nolan, can you advance to the next?
Oh, yeah.
I encourage you to send me a message if you have questions, comments regarding any of these projects, the libraries, the streetscape, the RFP project. Take down my email, and if you'd like to join the meeting distribution list, if this is your first time tonight, please send me a note for that as well.
And we'll send out an email tomorrow with all the information, with the links to the surveys for reflecting on the roundtable, with a link to CDOT, just so you all have that information.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time and
Gracias a todos.
Take care.